Duncan Hampshire and Wade Tomlinson. So Duncan is the International Progressions and Recognitions Manager for Pearson Edexcel, and works with the higher education sector around the world to help students gain a fair recognition of their achievements when transitioning to university with Pearson Edexcel qualifications. Duncan has previously worked as a senior international trade advisor for the Department for International Trade with different bodies in the higher education sector, based in Spain and the UK, as a senior credential evaluator for the UK NARIC, which is now UK ENIC. Wade is the partnership manager for higher education institutions and ministries for Pearson Higher Education International Division. Wade works with educational organizations across the globe, such as universities, ministry bodies, and credential evaluators to support progression for learners with Pearson BTEC credentials. His primary goal is enhancing visibility and availability of BTEC progression options towards further higher education study. I'd now like to hand over to Duncan and Wade to pick it from here. Duncan?
Thank you, Marvin. It's lovely to speak to you all here today. And it's a pleasure to be able to talk about the British education system, the British curriculum, and of course, Pearson International Awards. I'm going to be kicking off today, talking to you about the British education system. So an introduction, putting everything into context, then about the development of academic school qualifications and how they articulate with higher education. I'm then going to hand over to my colleague Wade, who's going to be talking about vocational secondary education, Pearson Vocational Awards, and their international recognition. And then we'll be handing back to Marvin to take questions and answers and hopefully finish within an hour. So without further ado, let's launch into the topic. So the first slide I'm sharing with you is very much an overview, if you like, of British education. Now, when we talk about British education, of course, we're not talking about one education system. So I think it's always good to start with putting in context which one of the education systems we're talking about. And this excellent document, which is available from the QAA, the Quality Assurance Agency of the United Kingdom's website, is a document which compares the frameworks of education that we have in the UK. So in the first column there on the left-hand side, you'll see the framework for England and Northern Ireland. Then we have the Welsh framework. Then they've included here the framework of our neighbouring country, the Republic of Ireland. And then we have the Scottish framework of education. And what you'll see is not only do they all have different levels, they have different numbers of levels. So the way in which each country that forms the United Kingdom and our neighbours, Republic of Ireland, have structured their approach is different. I'd like to draw your attention really to the framework for England and Northern Ireland, which is, if you like, the basis for what we're going to be talking about today. And it's obviously very closely linked to the Welsh framework as well, both having 8 levels. And in particular, we'll be looking at levels 1, 2, and 3, which are the secondary school, also the primary and secondary levels of education in our countries. And if you look in levels 2 on the first column for England and Northern Ireland, you will see that mentioned there are vocational and technical qualifications, BTEC firsts, GCSEs, functional skills, known as essential skills in Northern Ireland. And level 3, again, we have our AS and our A levels and our vocational technical professional qualifications such as MVQ level 3 or BTEC national diplomas. These then articulate with levels 4, 5, and 6, and these are the higher education levels. So level 4 in both Wales and England would equate to the first year of university, 5 the second year, and third year a completed honours degree in level 6, and then 7 would be the masters. So I just want to put that in context so that we understand which part of the system we're talking about today, and also which one of the British education systems we are looking at and how they articulate. I think another really interesting point to make is, in essence, the system is born international. As you can see, it's already contemplating how qualifications move across borders, and this document is testament to that within the confines of the United Kingdom and Republic of Ireland. But let's move on to a little bit more precision and start to look at the British curriculum. So the British curriculum, also known as the national curriculum in England, it was designed in 1988, first established in 1988 by the then Secretary of Education, Sir Ken Baker, or Ken Baker as he was at the time. And this curriculum is implemented today in all state schools in the United Kingdom, and forms the basis, if you like, of any international developments from that. So the British curriculum, very much based on traditions of UK education, but very much a modern qualification, and it hasn't stood still. This is something that has been developed over time from 1988, and as we'll see, is something that is continued to be developed and modernized as we meet new challenges in the world and in education. So we have different key stages, which are the statutory stages of education development, stages 1 to 4, and an early years stage as well. And each stage has subjects and links and elements designed within the curriculum. There are key statutory areas of study, which we'll see how they're distributed over the different years. They naturally include English, math, science, art, citizenship, computing, some design, geography, history, languages referred often to as modern languages, particularly in later years, music and PE. And then there is a guidance around the personal social education, and also in state and local authority or state maintained schools, there is a religious element that is brought in. So it is a complete curriculum, and it's very much designed to, as it's phased throughout the key stages, which refer to the age of the student, it's very much designed to impart the key elements of the curriculum, but without being overly prescriptive. So there is still room within this national curriculum for individual design by schools and for teachers to bring the curriculum alive within the context in which they're teaching. Let's look at it in a little bit more precisely by key stages or year groups. So you'll see here that we have an initial early years stage, reception stage, where it is about the foundation skills, so expressed in much more broad language, communication language, etc., understanding the world, literacy, mathematics, as you'd expect. Then as we move into primary school with key stage 1, we have core subjects that are taught through a range of areas. You'll see that languages is sometimes taught, sometimes not, depending on the primary school in question. And then there are the other elements such as relationship and health education, religious education that must be provided. As we move through the key stages, you'll see that by the time we've reached key stage 4, which is years 10 to 11, not all the subjects are statutory. So the hollow dots are ones that are advisory, not statutory. So we have English, maths and science, which are the core subjects, as well as citizenship, computing, physical education, religion, and relationship and health education, which are core. And then students will opt into, in that GCSE period, the subjects which develop their interest. We then go into the next stage, which would be, depending on the academic route, it would be A-levels, AS and A-levels, and then the vocational route, it could be BTEC First or BTEC Nationals, depending on the development of the student at that higher level. Now, how is all this regulated? So this is all regulated at its heart by the Department for Education. And the Department for Education is the body which sets policy for education in secondary levels in the United Kingdom, both in vocational and in academic. But they then hand off to two other key bodies, the Office of Qualifications and Examinations Regulation, better known as Ofqual, and Ofsted, which are the school inspectorate. The Ofqual body is key in what we do, in that it has best practice in terms of the design of qualifications. So Ofqual sits at the heart of the development of qualifications, statutory qualifications to be offered in the United Kingdom, but also at Pearson, we use the Ofqual best practice in the design of all our international qualifications as well, ensuring that not only are we of a standard with the UK education system, but also we're following internationally agreed best practice in how qualification is put together. And that is a complex process, but it does ensure that we have an equality of standards across our awards. Ofsted, the final group, is School Inspectorate, and this applies to British schools in the United Kingdom, British state schools in the United Kingdom. There are similar bodies or mirroring bodies, such as British Overseas Inspectorate, COBIS, etc., which carry out this work internationally in terms of school inspection. So one of the things I think I mentioned earlier, and I think this is really important, is this curriculum, the British curriculum is not a standstill curriculum. It's something which is very much developing, and as digital literacy, AI, other elements come into the educational sphere, the curriculum develops to build these in. And this is one of the reasons why the curriculum is so successful internationally, is it's an evolving process. And I think this quote from Andy Puttock at North Anglia demonstrates why that is the case. It goes without saying there's a worldwide reputation for quality. So highly respected by universities and employers worldwide, and we'll look at that in more detail in a minute. At least 160 qualifications countries offer British international qualifications and British curriculum around the world, and that's only increasing. And an interesting fact actually shared with us from the Going Global thing from the British government is that over 50 serving world leaders have benefited from British education, and 38% of Nobel Prize winners studied in the UK. So, okay, an interesting factoid, but also I think a very useful demonstration of the quality of the awards. Let's have a look at then where it's being chosen. So in Europe, 44% of international schools offer elements of the British curriculum to their learners. 40% over here in Southeast Asia. 75% of international schools in Africa offer elements of British curriculum to their learners. As you can see, it is the widest used across the world, and 48% in Asia as well. So tremendously popular international curriculum, particularly relative to other options that are available and widely taught around the world. So one of the features of the education system is rigorous qualifications and assessments, and it's for this I think the system is perhaps best known around the world, with the qualifications enabling students to move on to the next stage in their educational careers. And so we see here the British curriculum mapped out from ages 3 to 5 right through to the A-level section. And then we see the principal international qualifications that are there. So you'll see that we have the international GCSE or the BTEC level 1 and 2, which are at the key stage 3. In the UK, students will take GCSE or BTEC level 2. And then we have the BTEC level 3s and the international A levels for the students taking A levels. As I said before, these qualifications, both the international GCSE and international A level, are at the same level as the domestic GCSE and A levels, or the domestic BTECs. However, they are developed with very much an international audience in mind. And so because we're offering these qualifications across so many countries, we're taking into consideration the international context in which they're taught and using that to create a qualification, which in essence becomes a passport to the next stage of education, be that from GCSE, international GCSE to A-level, or from A-level on to university. And here we have our Pearson slots in here. So we have iPrimary, iLower Secondary, our international GCSEs, and our international A-levels and A-levels offered internationally, as well as our BTEC levels 1, 2, and 3 offered worldwide. And so this chart really demonstrates how, on the one hand, the British curriculum is operating under the statutory observation of Ofqual and DFE, and then how that is developed then internationally and offered by exam boards, and in particular by Pearson worldwide. So just a comparison here of the different people offering different exam boards offering British curriculum awards. As you can see, Pearson, OCR, Cambridge AQA, Oxford AQA, and the Welsh Joint Examination Board offering awards. You can see that Pearson, we offer the full range of international qualifications, both at primary, lower secondary, GCSE, international GCSE A-level, international A-level, and of course BTECs right through. So yes, that gives you an idea of the range of providers out there and the different offerings that each one of those provides. So in summary, it's chosen, the British curriculum is chosen more than any other curriculum in the world, offered in 160 countries worldwide. And it is growing, so more and more schools are opting for British education in different countries around the world. As we've mentioned before, it's best known perhaps for its assessments, so it's rigorous assessments, GCSE and A-levels, with A-levels very much now, international A-levels and A-levels, becoming the gold standard almost for university entry. And I think more importantly for university success, not just entering university, but also succeeding and having the higher level skills required to complete a degree anywhere in the world. As we mentioned there, it's a passport to universities and highly valued, not just by the universities, but also by employers. And is often requested as part of the employment process, particularly for graduate jobs as well. We'll ask you which board and which exam you took prior to university. So I think that's quite a nice summary there, showing how it fits together and how successful this particular form of education is. But talking about university, how does it articulate with university? So I think we mentioned some quotes here, respected as the gold standard from Relocate magazine, highly recognized internationally, leading to different gateways around the world, and accepted here by more, QS, Quinn Crowley-Simmons mentioned more than 450 universities worldwide. That's on the low side, so that's what they said, but it's actually, I think, recognized by considerably more than that, as we'll show you shortly. So, accepted all around the world. Here's some examples. All Russell Group universities, including Oxford and Cambridge, accept Pearson International qualifications. All UK universities, as you'd expect. The Group of 8 in Australia. Some of the best names in the US, Yale, Columbia, MIT, Caltech, all accept Pearson International qualifications. All the top Canadian, in fact, pretty much all the Canadian universities accept Pearson qualifications. Some well-known names there, McGill and Toronto. And then right across Asia, so Hong Kong, Tokyo, CUST, and US there as well, to mention just a few of the many. And you can find listings on our website, of all the universities that have signed an agreement with us and accept our qualifications, and this list is increasing all the time. Now, I think it's also interesting sometimes to look at where our students go, and where are our students heading to. And here's a little infographic, really, of where our students are heading. So we recently carried out a little survey of our last cohort to find out where they were heading, and they were heading to over 60 different destinations around the world. What's really interesting is that our students, just over half, I would say, of each cohort travel internationally from the country where they took their secondary qualifications to go to another country to undertake their university education. What's really interesting about this is the spread of places where they've studied. So the yellow group is where there's the highest concentration of our students traveling to internationally. Unsurprisingly, the UK is there. Canada is one that has increased dramatically over the last few years. The US, as you'd expect, is a huge draw for our students. In fact, it's the largest draw of international students in the world. And then Australia. Again, not a big surprise. These are the big four international players in the reception of international students. But then we have quite another, we have a range of other countries which are taking large numbers. And one of the biggest changes we've seen recently is how the Netherlands is accepting more and more international students. We also see Indonesia being popular. But to be quite frank, right across the globe, really, we have students traveling for their university education. And this really does show the ease with which the Pearson International AS and A levels allow you to access different education markets across the world and to access different universities. It's quite humbling to see the different journeys people follow. And what's also interesting, following up on this, is that the variety of journeys that our learners follow has changed considerably. In the past, the majority would be going to the UK or possibly to North America, but now we're seeing multiple different journeys for our students. So students are traveling to one country for their A levels, another country for their first degree, and then perhaps a third country for their masters. And this is very exciting, and it is humbling and very pleasurable to be part of that process and seeing these learners move around the world. And on that note, I think this is a great point at which to hand over to my colleague Wade, who's going to pick up the story from a BTEC perspective.
Thank you very much. I'm going to have to give you some slide prompts if that's okay. So if you want to flick on to the next one. Hello, everybody. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of our vocational qualifications. And sort of part of the job is to really work with universities across the globe in understanding the qualification, sometimes just telling them what it is, and all the way through to working with universities around admissions policy and really trying to support learners with these credentials in progressing on to degree programs. Many years ago, these were non-standard qualifications to enter higher education. They're kind of built for the workforce. Just looking at Duncan's map, the work we get to do is really interesting. We do reach out to all sorts of universities in very different places. Next slide, please, Duncan. So let's start with what BTEC stands for. BTEC is an acronym for the Business Technology Education Council. Now, this name was an organisation, I think it was about 1974, I may be getting my dates wrong. And this organisation created or was established and created credentials to really support the workforce, to create qualifications where skills were needed by the workforce. And later down the line, the Business Technology Education Council gradually merged with an awarding organisation called Edexcel. And gradually, even further down the line, Edexcel was then fell under Pearson, was acquired by Pearson. So Pearson now own and oversee the brand that is BTEC. So the name stands for Business Technology Education Council, but they are more commonly known as BTEC. And they're still the same in nature. They're still qualifications that focus on technical skills. And they exist across various different levels and various different countries. So we operate in around 70 different countries across those levels. We have about 1 million learners across those levels that study BTEC in different countries. And they've become so familiar in the UK system, not just internationally, but in the UK, we now have around 1 in 4 learners that go to university each year will do so holding a BTEC credential. And the thing that makes them slightly different, no, you're fine, you can skip on. The thing that makes them slightly different is they're actually co-designed with industry. So they're the perfect cocktail of industry, academia. We even have students on the panel as well to really ensure that what we're teaching, what we're putting together really makes sense. And you'll see them in sectors like this. So we have you usually see a BTEC all through the various levels that we have through in computing, in engineering, construction, business, and that's typically because they align with specific job roles within those sectors as well. So if you were to pick out a specification from one of these subjects, you'll see a list of roles that they're kind of suited towards. Next slide, please, Duncan. Now, you've seen one of the frameworks that Duncan's presented. So the BTEC qualifications, or Pearson, are an Ofqual regulated organisation, and our UK further education qualifications are all regulated, or mostly regulated by the Ofqual, and aligned to that framework that you saw. And this just gives you a bit of a view of which BTEC levels exist. And what is their equivalence against those levels and also against those academic qualifications. So you can see you can actually start your BTEC at your very first qualification at level 1 and progress all the way through to just below a doctorate. So you can study, we have a couple of BTEC level 7 qualifications that some learners study to then progress on to an MBA. So you can study a level 7, take your credit and apply for an MBA at a university. The ones we're going to look at in more detail today will be the levels 2 and 3, which are kind of typically used, and as you can see, with international GCSEs and international A levels, as currency to enter university admission. So it's quite a useful, and I think we'll be sharing these slides as well. So this is quite a useful resource for you. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. I think we're on a slight delay there. Cheers, Duncan. And you'll see this is more of a specific BTEC painted picture of the university-focused qualifications. So quite useful to see the a typical learner age there, and that you can actually progress with BTEC all the way through to your level 7. You don't necessarily, we don't have many at level 6, which is where the UK degree would be awarded, but you can study your BTEC level 2, use them to enter a BTEC level 3, and here you'll use those to enter a high national, which are 2 years of a university degree, a bachelor's degree in the UK. And many students then apply for a final year or a top-up program, and then can use that degree to progress onto a master's or study a BTEC level 7. Thanks, Duncan. Should we go on to the next one? And I wanted to sort of talk about how, before we go into the qualification in more detail, how the BTEC qualifications interact with various external people. They're not just used as university entry criteria. So I've listed recruit, which is kind of the point of today. Predominantly, students will either use their qualifications to go into employment or to go into university, but we're seeing more interaction with these across the board. So universities are starting to really add policy for BTEC, because BTEC learners tend to come from various different backgrounds, and for universities this could be that they recruit more local learners that don't want to travel, or learners that are currently in the workforce. So some of our university partners are really working with us to diversify their recruitment track and reach learners that they wouldn't usually reach through the typical route. Some universities are using BTEC for partnerships. So we have universities that are now working with local colleges in giving BTEC learners more guidance in coming to university. So they'll be working with them directly, providing a stream towards higher education for them. Or at our higher levels, with some of our higher nationals, our BTEC levels 4 and 5, universities are working with colleges internationally to provide that final year. So you may see an English university pop up somewhere in Asia to provide that final year, delivering country. I'm going through this in reverse order, so apologies if this is slightly confusing. We also have some universities delivering our qualifications as well. So some are able to deliver BTEC, mainly at the higher level. But not only that, we have industry delivering BTEC. So we have them putting their staff onto these qualifications to upskill them in the workforce, or they could be apprentices that have decided to join a company, learn on the job, get paid while they do it, and it's all paid for. And the technical learning of that could typically be a BTEC. And then we also work with industry and universities on reform and policy. So whenever there's a change in the education system, whenever the British government announces something, we tend to work with our university partners across the board to really look at addressing reform. It could be a specific initiative. Because the one at the moment would be the reform in the UK, where universities are very much in favour of BTEC. Next slide, please. Now, this is a typical learner profile of someone studying a BTEC level 2 and a BTEC level 3. And you'll see that if we were to plug in the international GCSE around the BTEC level 2 certificate or the BTEC level 3 international extended diploma, you can replace those with the international GCSE and the international A level. Let's typically it's not uncommon in the UK to take both a BTEC and an A level now, and I'll explain how that can be achieved. The next slide will give a bit more detail into that to show you the different sizes of BTEC that are available. But a BTEC level 2 certificate, so there are 4 sizes at level 2 internationally. The UK's moved to sort of a one size system now, but the level 2 certificate could typically be considered 2 GCSEs, whereas the level 3 extended diploma, the largest size, could be considered 3 international A levels. And these are your typical school years as well, 14 to 16. When you're sort of at the end of high school, and then you move on to either a sixth form or a further education college when you're 16 to 19, and then you move on to a university afterwards. And the grading scales are mentioned down there as well, which are quite useful to know, because when these come across your desk, sometimes they'll have 1 grade, sometimes they'll have 2, sometimes they'll have 3, but the scale is pass, merit, distinction star for level 2 and level 3 qualifications. BTEC qualifications, and the specifications contain the grading criteria and how many grades a learner can achieve. Next slide, please. Now, this is probably one of the sort of headaches that BTEC can cause when it comes to making an admission decision. It's just learning about the size of the qualification. The reason why they exist in different sizes is really around flexibility and being able to, not just have to study a full qualification, but you can cut 3 different BTECs into 3 different sizes at level 3. At the equivalent, if you were to do 3 subsidiary diplomas, you'll be doing the equivalent of 3 A levels. But some students do that to diversify their learning. It can be tricky when that comes to university admission, because our guidance around BTEC progression is to apply for a subject that's very similar to your BTEC. So you may see a student do, I don't know, an international A level in business or in psychology, and then do a BTEC diploma, 2 international A level sizes in business, just to change it up. And the reason why these, the BTEC and A level coexist, because they're 2 very different types of learning. And you'll see sizes at level 2 available internationally. It's just quite a useful reference point. So I've added the level 2 slide in there as well, a table in there as well. Next slide, please, Duncan. Now, these are just some of the defining characteristics of what a BTEC is. They're all sort of assessed in various different ways. So some universities, sorry, not universities, our assessment methods range from group presentations to practical work. Sometimes employers get involved in the assessment. It could be, you know, there could be exams issued by the college that they study. But these are some of these here sort of make a BTEC what they are. The fact they are recognised by international universities. We do have a list that's publicly available. We've added profiles on UCAS, which is the UK Admissions Service, which is sort of the predominant body where students apply to go to university if studying in the UK. Employers are at the heart of these qualifications to ensure that you don't just have to consider university progression, but you can move into work. I have a statement at the end of this slide to share with you. So our international qualifications are slightly different to the UK version. They're slightly more flexible, and they're 100% internally assessed, which does mean that they are slightly separated from the national, which are Ofqual regulated, but our international qualifications are self-regulated by Pearson. But we have had them benchmarked. This UK NARIC, now ECTIS, is the UK's credential evaluator, and they have benchmarked these qualifications as comparable. So the international has been deemed very comparable to the UK national. And we're looking at large international projects at the moment. There's a lot of uptake across the globe. So we've actually submitted these to our international BTECs to the Netherlands NLQF, which have been accepted. So you'll see BTEC appearing on the Dutch framework. And we're currently involved in large projects with the Ministry of Jordan around implementing BTEC across schools. It's a large project, and they're starting to look at level 2 and 3 for their learners to really look at the skills agenda. Next slide, please, Duncan. And this just gives you a bit of an insight into some of the companies that we've worked with that sort of have input on BTEC qualifications. We've created qualifications alongside AWS and Microsoft. Most recently, the British Esports Association have been heavily involved in creating a level 3 in esports, which is a sector that's currently booming. That's going to be worth a couple of billion in a few years. A couple of billion pounds in a few years. Siemens interact with our qualifications across the board. So they deliver them, they have input in developing them, they run apprenticeships. They've even spoken on panels with Pearson internationally. They do a lot with us, Siemens. And one of the sort of most important points here is that BTECs, or in fact, British qualifications themselves are mapped against various different frameworks. But with BTEC, we've really focused on the National Research Council's 21st Century Skills to ensure that, I think Duncan mentioned at the beginning around the national curriculum, that there's a strong focus on intrapersonal and interpersonal skills. And this framework really ensures that we're focusing on what's relevant, what's current, what do employers need. Most recently, Pearson actually released a skills map, a global skill, a regional skills map, and we're looking at developing an international one. So BTEC kind of now sort of drives or has that input of what's driving the skills agenda, what's required, and then we can embed that into our learning. Next slide, please, Duncan. Not only employers, we don't just work with employers, we work with professional associations, because these are sometimes the bodies that are at the heart of knowing what's required within industry. Some of these professional bodies have either helped write a qualification, helped develop or validate one, or they've provided some sort of exemption or perk for students that graduate. So with the Digital Marketing Institute, if you complete a BTEC in business, and I think the marketing pathway, you're eligible for one of their courses, to take one of their courses to improve your skill and have professional accreditation as well. Next slide, please, Duncan. Sorry, my voice is going to quickly sip of water. Oh, excuse me, thank you. And this is the benchmarking statement that I mentioned from UK NARIC, now ECTIS, and this kind of just gives more trust in the qualification. It's just showing that a third party has shown that the international qualifications that we have, and we have this for our international A levels and GCSEs as well, have deemed the international versions of our qualifications comparable to the nationals. And with the nationals, you can actually view their currency against A levels on that body I mentioned earlier, UCAS. They have a tariff calculator, and you can see the various sizes against A levels. So it shows you, or gives you more trust in showing how much a BTEC can be worth against an A level. Next slide, please, Duncan. And this is just an example of some of the universities recognising our international BTECs, and it's a growing list, but we're starting to work with universities. There's plenty of universities that consider these learners with these credentials that haven't told us yet, but we publish those that say, you know, Pearson, we do tell your learners, and we've started publishing this list on the left and growing this list. It's available on our website, and there's a link at the end. Some universities are even adding BTEC international policy to their website now to guide more learners their way. And this is an example from, I believe it might be King's University, which is a Russell Group university in the UK. So you'll start seeing policy pop up on websites, not just us promoting progression, but universities doing it themselves. Next slide, please, Duncan. And these are just some really useful resources to consider. You have mine and Duncan's contact if anything isn't covered within the call, within the webinar. Too many calls recently for our outreach purposes, but you'll have some useful information there. Our qualification website holds all of our syllabi, so you can see absolutely everything there. You can see our progression lists that we promote. If you do consider these learners and you would like to be a part of it, you're more than welcome. And we also have a certificate services page, so we have learners that need to verify their credentials. Our certificate services currently, learners are able to send their certificates directly to a university via Pearson, so we can send you their credentials directly, and they can request that at the bottom of that left-hand column, and that is how we verify. And we're currently looking into improving those solutions, but that's the current service that we have. And if you have any general inquiries, progression@pearson.com is probably where it should go to. It's owned by me and Duncan, but for business continuity purposes, we've listed that there. And I believe that's it. And we've open it up for questions.
Thank you very much, Wade and Duncan. We have a few questions in the chat, and the first one is, are there any alternative qualifications or prerequisites beside previous BTEC levels that are accepted for admission into a master's degree program in IT?
Sorry, could you repeat that, Ilaria?
Yes, of course. Are there any alternative qualifications or prerequisites besides previous BTEC levels that are accepted for admission into a master's degree program in IT? And maybe that's also follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Are there any specific scholarship programs that focus on professional development or advanced studies in information technology for teachers?
It's kind of hard for us to talk to scholarship-based programs. We as an awarding organisation, we don't necessarily have that kind of reach or provision. In terms of alternative prerequisites beside BTEC, there are plenty that would be considered. I mean, if you're applying for a master's, I think universities would typically expect a degree. In terms of prerequisites for that degree, I suspect they would look at your A levels or your BTEC, so your level 3 credentials. If you're looking for a master's degree in IT, I suspect you'll probably need a bachelor's degree in IT. If you're doing a BTEC, you'd probably be looking at a higher national diploma in computing and then gaining a degree. It's very rare that a university will consider a learner with a high national diploma for a degree a master's. I think it has happened, but we don't promote that. We promote undergraduate progression. I suspect that you'll need a heavy amount of work experience for that to be considered. So prerequisites wise, I think you'd be looking at a degree. In terms of scholarships, so are there any specific scholarships? You need to do a bit of research with within universities for those kinds of things. We don't publish them within Pearson. You'd probably need to do some research within some universities that at the programs you're interested in studying in. So if it's teaching, or if you are a teacher looking to upskill, dive into a university and see what kind of scholarships they have. Their websites tend to promote everything that they have available.
Thank you, Wade. Duncan, have you got anything to add or?
Not really. I mean, if you're searching for scholarships, focus on teaching intensive universities that are looking for to teach training. Look at the individual department in question, particularly in the US. Many departments will have scholarships attached to that department. Look very carefully at the application criteria, who can apply. It really is a lot of research. There are agents you can use to support you, but it is very much about university by university, researching department by department to get scholarships. They're very competitive internationally, and yes, a lot of work to obtain, but can be worth it.
I think you've hit the nail on the head around looking ahead as well. So even before you look to take your qualifications, if you look at scholarship criteria before you decide on what you're taking, they usually have, what you need to achieve. And even with sports scholars, there may be a certain qualification that is accepted. So I think both international A level and international BTEC are considered by NCAA in the US. Of course, they may require a specific, a certain ability and achievement as well.
Thank you. And the next question, more of a question, is asked, I will say, from Emmanuel, who says, we have a problem with US universities. Please work on increasing the numbers there. So I don't know whether you have any comments on this.
Yeah, we're working a huge amount on US universities, and the number is increasing. We recently attended a conference where the majority of international universities were present, and I'm happy to say that almost all universities there accept Pearson qualifications for either not just for admission, but also for credit. So credit is very commonly offered for our A-levels in US universities, and the vast majority are now doing that. One of the challenges, I think, is sometimes with the smaller, less international universities, and that's where we can support. So if you're facing a challenge with perhaps universities, this is the first A-level I've seen because they don't attract many international students, then it's worthwhile contacting the progression email button box below, and we can share some information with that university on your behalf. I think it's always good to remember, I think 5% of universities in the United States take 75% of the international students. So there are roughly 4,500 universities. So a small handful is dealing with the vast majority. And so it's quite possible that some of the smaller universities or in smaller states, this would be the first international credential they've seen. So do reach out to us for support, because we're always trying to educate universities as more and more institutions in the US receive international students.
Thank you. I think we have a direct question now from Dr. Julius. So I think my colleague Ken is going to unmute him.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. Thanks, Wade, and thanks, Duncan, for your presentation. I think I've gotten a lot of it that I needed. I'm attending this from Kenya. And one of the things I have noted lately is, of course, there is very increasing demand of the British curriculum in Kenya, and more so peer and international as well. BTEC as well. We can see many institutions are keen on it. I'm from Riara University, and Riara University is one of the universities that has absorbed the highest number of students from BTEC, and basically from the British curriculum. Many of our students come from your curriculum, and we really have many of them from BTEC joining our courses in Bachelor of Science and all that. However, I have noted an increasing, while there is an increasing demand, but at the same time, there is an increasing, possibly wearing down of the quality, because the pricing of schools in Kenya offering the British curriculum is increasingly becoming very varied, to the extent that there are schools offering as low as, charging as low as 500 USD in a semester. And while others are charging 5-10 times as much. So I'm just wondering, is there any way that there will be a standard way to observe such in the context of quality? Because I am certain that when you charge too low, that it will mean that even the quality of staff you hire would equally be very low. And that's going to affect many students in terms of even getting into scholarships and getting into quality universities. So I don't know whether there's any mechanism to check on the levels like reference across the world. Thank you.
Yes, I think quality is at the core of everything that we do, and certainly from an exam board perspective. So we are providing the examination, we're providing the curriculum. We are carrying out a significant data research to ensure that the standard of the grading, the standard of the qualification is the same wherever it's taken in the world. The teaching that leads up to that, we provide considerable support to teachers and schools in order to develop the curriculum. But at the end of the day, they are an independent school and they're not run by Pearson directly. So what we're doing is we're ensuring that the qualification they achieve at the end, whether you take it in Kenya, whether you take it in the US, whether you take it in China, is the same level. So the student who has completed our qualification, we know that standard is the same across the board. In terms of Kenya Pacific question, I don't know whether Marvin, you'd like to jump in and talk a little bit about some of the work you're doing with schools there.
Yes, yes, Duncan. Yeah, thanks. So from a local perspective in Kenya, the approval process is become tighter in terms of what we consider before we approve an institution. Looking at reviewing of CVs, carrying out prior inspections before an institution becomes a center. Now we're doing this more closely through. So before we approve an institution, they have to have been approved by the Ministry of Education and then the Kenya National Examinations Council. So that process has become tighter in terms of, so we're very keen on whom we bring on board in terms of the teaching and delivery. And so in that way, we make sure that the quality standards are kept. We do usually carry out regular visits to the institutions. If there's anything that significantly changes in terms of quality, we do bring that up and then address them as and when. But we know that there's demand, but we are very careful in terms of who we bring on board to offer qualifications. Thank you.
Thank you, Marvin. And we have some more questions in chat. One is about, again, local university in Kenya. Hello, are you doing anything about local universities in Kenya because they do not admit our BTech Art Level 3 or holders?
So we're having a universities forum, which is quite topical. But we do we must understand that not every university will consider a credential when they first see it, and we can't actively approach every case, every university where every BTech exists, but where a university recognition issue occurs, like Duncan said, we would like to support you. So if there is a specific university where we can have intervention and support you on a recognition issue, we'll be glad to do so. So if you have correspondence with that university, and if they say, we don't know what this is, we can't admit the student, we don't know how to measure it, drop us a line at progression@pearson.com and we'd happily support you. But it's kind of hard because we know that there will be cases, we have a recognition list, but where a student applies to, there are, I think someone mentioned the US, there are thousands of universities in the USA. We wouldn't necessarily have that reach to every individual institution. Gradually, we hope to, but It's currently a growing list, and that'll be the same for Kenya. And it's good to hear Dr. Otondo come on the line and say that RIARA are considering BTEC learners. We hope to see more universities, if they're already on the call, consider BTEC learners. So yeah, I think this is one of those kind of good events to run to try and encourage and increase that.
Thank you, Wade. And we are almost at time, but we still have quite a few questions in chat. So I am going to pick another one now, and then we can share perhaps your contact details after the webinar so that people can pose their questions directly. Is there a direct way of verifying the Pearson results other than applying for results to be sent to a third party?
Currently, we're working on a digital solution, but it's not in place yet. So at the moment, learners are having to send their credentials directly via Pearson. And that's how we verify. I mean, you can also ask the centre that delivers those qualifications, but if you're looking for confirmation of an award, students can send those directly. So we are working on improving our process, but as it stands, approach the centre and you can confirm with the centre that's awarded that qualification, or students will need to send them directly via Pearson.
Thank you. And another question, I don't know whether this has been answered already, but is most Kenyan universities do not accept BTEC graduates. What are we doing to ensure they recognize BTEC?
I think this is kind of similar to the previous question, that we when it comes to university policy, we can do as much as we can. We can inform them about the qualification, how to assess it, share our syllabi, and do more awareness events like this to show universities that there are learners with these credentials. They are being accepted all over the world. They are capable of entering higher education as much as a student with international A levels. And like Duncan said, we do sort of larger scale events with large bodies. I think Christine sort of mentioned in the chat that we have worked a bit with KNQA on this. But similar sort of stuff. We're working with universities constantly to try and overturn policy or change or implement policy to encourage the uptake of these qualifications. And if there is ever a recognition issue, we have tried to support individual learners, which then kind of encourages a university to come on board. I think the difficulty can be that if a university only sees a BTEC learner in a year, it's quite hard for them to assess that credential on a case-by-case basis. What we're trying to do is reverse that, let them promote with us that they consider these credentials, help them do it, and more learners will then gradually apply to that university. So if you do have any individual cases where a university doesn't know the qualification, contact us at progression@pearson.com, and we'll try and support you in as much as we can. And there is a limit to how much Pearson, I realise we're over time, but there is a limit to what Pearson can do. We shouldn't always try and overturn a decision. Students aren't just assessed on credentials, they're assessed on grades and other criteria. But where we can support, we will. So get in touch.
Thank you very much. And I think we're now at time. So that concludes our Q&A session. But I made a note of all the questions and people have posed them so that we can go back to them separately. And now I'm going to hand over to Marvin for the closing statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Duncan. Thank you, Wade. Thank you, Laria, for the informative session. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our webinar. We are aware that quite a few questions that are we didn't manage to walk through, but we'll pick this offline. And we'll shortly be sharing a survey link. We'll appreciate if you can get your support by filling in the form to get your feedback, and this will inform how we run our future sessions. The recording for this webinar will be available 24 hours after the end of today's session, and so you can still access and view again at your convenience. We hope then that you found this presentation informative, and we wishing you a great rest of the day and stay safe. Thank you.